It is the whole membership of the OECD that decided that Russia was a country with which they'd rather engage and not wait until they were completely like-minded in order to join the OECD, but rather have a dialogue with Russia, which at this stage is technical in nature, at the level of experts, at the level of committees. The time will come, the last chapter of Russia's accession to the OECD is the political dialogue, and that will be held with the Russian authorities and with the membership, no longer with the Secretariat, no longer with our committees or our experts, which in any way, our committees are formed by officials from the governments, the member governments. But there will be a moment when all the expertise and all the single issues from steel and from taxes and from education and health will move into the political sphere, and that will be the last part, and that is when the members will have to decide effectively when and how, under what conditions, Russia will become a member of the OECD.
From where it stands now, do you think they should become a member of the OECD?
I think the transformational power of the process of joining the OECD is one of the most important elements of the accession process. Not necessarily once you are, that helps all the time, but the capacity of countries to use the accession process to actually produce changes inside legislative, of codes, of regulations, etc., but also cultural changes within those countries.
What are the specific requirements on Russia in terms of human rights and corporate governance, which is a huge issue, where its accession to the OECD is concerned?
Yeah, the question, as I said, of technical issues, things like corporate governance and things like that are going to be addressed, are being addressed by 22 different committees, each one of them in their own specialty. And 6, 7 of them have already said we're satisfied that in our field of endeavor, the Russians are or are in the process of being in good shape. Now, there are other 15 that still have to declare that. So we expect to use the better part of 2014, perhaps even part of 2015, to do just that.
I realize this is a decision, a collective decision as to whether or not they will gain membership. You say that it can be a great facilitator in terms of bringing about change, being within the OECD. Yet, if you look at some of the evidence, and what I'm thinking about here is the death of the lawyer Sergei Magnitsky. Of course, he's believed to have been tortured in prison before he died after uncovering a massive corruption scandal at the heart of the Russian government. And doesn't this make something of a mockery of the OECD? I asked this in a different way before, but we didn't answer it directly. Doesn't this make something of a mockery of the OECD as anti-bribery convention?
First of all, they're not related. The question that you mentioned is one which is being dealt with in other instances by a number of countries. The anti-bribery convention is fairly straightforward. It's a question of Russian companies committing, actually the Russian government committing to check on Russian companies that they do not try to bribe officials in third countries in the pursuit of business. Now, what happens is, in exchange for Russia committing to do that, the British are committing not to do that in Russia, and the Spanish are committing not to do that in Turkey, and Turkey is committing not to do that in Mexico, etc., etc. So you create a network of commitments and of, I breathe down your neck and you breathe down mine, in order to make sure that nobody is bribing each other in the pursuit of business. That, in and of itself, produces a discipline, produces a network of commitments and a network of effectively what is today compliance, substantial compliance with the Anti-Bribery Convention. The questions of human rights, the questions of violations or not or none of what I would call more political situations are, as I said, the last chapter. What the process that is usually done is, and applies to any country, is that you don't want to be talking about fisheries and human rights. You don't want to be talking about steel and human rights or human rights, because the people who are talking steel with the Russian experts on steel do not have the capacity and do not have the authority to talk about human rights. So at a given moment in time, the final decision, the final stage of this is to say, okay, now we want to talk to you about politics, about policies, about whatever the issues. And this is when, first of all, it goes up in ranking. It goes up in the interlocutors in terms of their importance and their representation.
So what sort of timetable? How likely is it that Russia could join by next year?
They have been now working on this for 5 to 6 years. Our expectation is that if we continue working at good speed, which depends mostly on Russia, it could be a couple of years more. This is the expectation, and it is, I'd say, reasonably shared by the Russians themselves. We have all agreed that the question of the date is no longer what is going to drive us. My point is always that this is too important to be urgent. We got to do it right.